Welcome back to the Turn on the Music podcast. My name is Kyle. We have episode 10, and of course, I'm joined by CJ. How are you tonight, sir?
Good, good. How are you, sir?
I'm good.
Yeah?
How's the week going?
It's just been a week. It's been a bad week. Yeah. Typically, we record on a Wednesday night. We're recording on a Saturday. I was sick at the beginning of the week, and it threw me off for the rest of the week.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So I finally feel like today that I've gotten my energy back from being sick. So, I should have taken the week off from work, but that just wasn't going to happen.
Right. Yeah.
How about yourself?
It's been a weird week, and
Yeah.
we might get to some of it during the podcast. I don't know, but it's been a weird week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like good weird or just weird?
I don't know. I mean, there's been bad weird stuff going on, but there's just been weird stuff going on. It's like,
yeah.
Some of it relates to the book, and some of it relates to the other book, and
what other book?
Both Spirit of Music and
really?
Awakening
Okay.
Spirits. So it's been weird. So.
Hey, I don't know if you've noticed this, and I think we've spoken briefly about it, but over the past few weeks, I've been doing reading it through. I've read it, and I'm going through the audiobook, and I'm going to do the same thing with the Spirit of Music, which I've done already. So now I'm going to go chapter by chapter again. But every time I go to read or listen to a chapter, it's coinciding with what's going on in my life.
Yeah.
And it's it's one of those things where you're dealing and you're processing what's going on that day or the day before. And then I listen to the chapter and I'm like, oh, that's actually a great way to look at it. Mm-hmm. Oh, I should use this to process what just happened.
Right.
And I'm going, this book.
Yeah.
This book gets me.
And that's kind of what I'm seeing, is that so many of the books that I'm reading are that not only is it starting to make sense, but they're starting to relate to each other.
Right.
And there was stuff in this chapter that directly correlates to Awakening Spirits, and I was like, all right, I never noticed that before, and I've kind of read Awakening Spirits before and read this book so many times, but it never clicked until tonight that there's a lot of stuff that's in common.
So you got a copy of Awakening Spirits?
Oh, I've had a copy for a long time.
Oh, okay.
My mom bought it for me 4 or 5 years ago. I just never finished reading it.
Okay. Have you ever done any research on Tom Brown Jr.?
Very little.
So there's a lot of controversy with him.
Is there?
There's a lot of controversy with him, how much of it is true, how much of it is made up. Mm-hmm. They're saying that he when you meet him, you think he's a nice guy, but he comes across there's a lot of yin and yang in a sense to him that is on the surface, and I thought it was very interesting. So there are a lot of people huge fans and oh, his stuff is great, and there's people that read his book and they read about him and is he really the truth? And the same thing happened with the Saltwater Buddha book that I gave you that you read. There was this whole big talk about the fact that a lot of it was made up, and I'm sitting here going, okay, let's say it is. Let's say it was made up. Let's just say the whole story was made up.
Right.
What's wrong with that?
Right.
What's wrong with that? If it's their way of sharing a thought process or how to help somebody, what's wrong if it's made up?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or even if the truth is stretched a little bit. I mean, this book, we know the music lesson. I'm holding it up because we're doing on this on video. But the music lesson, we even know it's hard to tell what's true and what's not true and where it lies. But it doesn't mean it's not a good book.
Right.
So, all right, I'm curious to see what happens. But we'll see. This was an interesting chapter. This is the longest chapter, I think, in this whole book.
Yeah. Before we get there, what are you listening to?
Oh, yeah. Corey Wong.
Yeah?
I've been listening to the live album. I keep going back to it.
It's pretty good, right?
I didn't, I played it and then I stopped, and then I was driving home one night and I was like, let me put it back on. And it's just, I've listened through the live album multiple times. It's actually really good. It's actually a really well recorded live album.
Yeah.
I was shocked. I'm impressed at how you could feel it. You know, and I know
Yep.
we've spoken about that before. You don't always get a good live recording. This is a good live recording.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the horns are great. They
Yep.
don't, even though they're powerful, they don't feel overpowering in
Yeah.
the recording. And, you know, it's a good balance. I don't feel like it's very heavy on one or the other. I think the bass, the mids, the treble, everything's balanced really well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think he comes out well when he plays. They did a very good job mixing it.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. But outside of that, honestly, I don't think I've been listening to much of anything else.
Okay.
How about yourself?
So last night we did Joanne Shaw Taylor,
Okay.
who is a blues guitarist.
Mm-hmm.
And we did a live album that had Kenny Wayne Shepherd on it, Michael Farris, and Joe Bonamassa, which I didn't realize. He played
nice.
the last 3 tracks, which was really cool. And then we did some Katie Pruitt, another artist I found this week. She's an artist that focuses a lot on like teen issues, you know, relationships, bad breakups, LGBTQ stuff, that sort of stuff. Wonderful writer, fantastic voice. And then we closed off with Hannah Wicklund. So
She just had an album come out.
did she?
I think it. Yeah. I think it's called The Prize. Because I pre-ordered the vinyl that she had done through her own production company, and I just got an email. Yeah, new album, The Prize. It'll be out. Okay, I apologize. It was announced that it'll be out October 13th.
Okay.
It's called The Prize, and yeah, you can actually pre-order it now. It's actually Friday the 13th, actually in October. That's too funny.
That's awesome.
So she's got a new album coming out. So that's a good anticipation right there.
Yep.
Yeah, she's good too.
Yeah, she is.
Yeah.
And it led to an interesting thought that I kind of pondered with Darren last night, relating to more the second book than anything else, because they talk about, you know, past lives and that sort of thing. And I was thinking we've said a lot that Hannah plays above where her age is.
Yes.
And I was thinking, do you think that for those that believe in the past lives, like, is that a resemblance of how many past lives they've had and how it bleeds through? It's just kind of a weird thought. And I thought about like people in high school that I went to school with that were like so much more, like they were like 40-year-old men in high school. Like, it's like, could they be? And they were more in tune to this sort of stuff than I was. So it's like, could that be? I don't know. So
It's possible. I mean, it really depends upon what your belief system is on past lives and how
Right.
what you retain. There's a lot of people that feel that you don't retain a lot of what you had in the previous life. And there's also discussions about how much you retain and then what you retain in the next and the next. And as it dwindles away, that means you're going to stop coming back. Like there's a lot of weird conversations about this whole entire thing. I would think that something from your past, meaning past lives, is retained to the point where it affects you in the life that you're in at that time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it would be, I think it would be, what's the word? I can't think of the word. I think that would be the case. So yeah, it would be very interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, she does play as if she's someone who's a lot older.
Mm-hmm.
And whether she started when she was 3, 4, 5, 6 years old, there's still something more behind her playing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And let's say you take the past life out of it. We don't know what she's gone through.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know if she
That's
had
true.
a good life. She's had a bad life. She's had a traumatic life. We don't know that. And that all plays a factor of what's probably bleeding into her playing as well.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
You know? So, yeah, that's actually a very... and I'm sure that question is going to come up more as we go through the second book.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because once you learn more about Michael at the end of the second book, that all comes into question.
Yep.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yep. Before I go off on a tangent, let's get to the book.
You have a tangent you want to go off on?
No, I could, but it's not important. Let's get to the book.
Is it going to come up while we go through the book?
I don't know. Who knows?
Tangents are fine.
Yeah, that's true. So we are on measure 10, which is space and rest. And the little tagline is, "Life is a lot like music. You've got to put some rest in there," which I think is kind of a cool thing.
Yes. So, where do you want to jump in on this chapter?
Let's give a kind of a brief summary of what happens in the beginning of the chapter. So, Victor decides to go to the bookstore. For those who don't know what a bookstore is, think about Amazon, but in a store form.
The fact that
and for those that don't know, Amazon started as a book company. Most of the people don't know that.
Nope.
I had a weird thing happen a couple of weeks ago. I was doing a demonstration of some tech stuff, and I asked the question in the group of people at work, who's ever seen Saved by the Bell? And there are so many young people in this group that have no idea what Saved by the Bell was. And I was like, good Lord, I'm so old.
That's too funny.
So yeah, Amazon used to be a bookstore. So anyway, Victor went to the bookstore to look for some more Tom Brown Jr. books, which of course led me to think, I wonder what book he was looking for or what he found.
Right.
Because I think a lot of what happens later on in the chapter, again, goes back to the book that I'm reading. So we'll talk about that when we get to it. And he meets this strange character named Isis, and Isis is a gift wrapper and a psychic, and
she's everything.
Yeah.
She's a gypsy.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, she's a gypsy.
Mm-hmm. Which led me down the rabbit hole of, like, we wonder who Michael is in real life. Like, who's Isis in real life?
It's a good question.
Maybe she really is a gypsy. Maybe she is.
Yeah, maybe she's not a real. Maybe she's just. We don't know if these other characters, how many of them are real or not. I mean, we know there's real ones. We know this.
Mm-hmm.
We know we can connect for most.
Yep. And when we get later in the chapter, I'll pull out some of the real ones.
Yeah.
Because you have a lot of characters in this book, and they're actually based on real people.
Yeah. But like Isis, for example, could just be a personality of Michael.
Right.
And he just made it a character to make it a little bit more poignant at that time.
Yep.
Yeah. No, that's a tough one.
Yep. So they talk about math and all sorts of, crazy number related things, which I don't know that we need to get into it because it's, it's interesting, but, I think
it's better read than us trying to explain it.
Yeah. So, at one point she said, God, there's so many microphones in the way. Like members of a band, all the numbers have unique and important responsibilities. 0 is the yin-yang number. It represents opposites, something and nothing, fullness and emptiness, big and little, power and weakness, bottom and top. It is not a coincidence that its shape is round. I'm round. Just wanted to point that out. A circle is the size of shape. A circle is the size of space. It has no beginning and no end. Many masterful things possess this shape, me being one of them. It is a holy shape. It is also the shape that all things eventually revert back to, even a straight line. If continued long enough, it will in due course make a circle. So, the beginning of the chapter, she talks about the number 0 and how it's both nothing and something at the same time. Because if you have the number 0 before the number 1, it's still 1. But if you put the 0 after the 1, it becomes 10. So it's a weird number that can both be nothing and something at the same time.
Right. And then they get into all the multiplication and the addition,
right,
and how numbers relate to each other. And it's a lot of mathematics, or a breakdown of certain mathematics that, like I said, it's probably better read than us explaining. So, but she leads into space.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then I don't know where you're going from after that one, because
keep going. You grab something.
I was going to I mean, we could jump even further ahead.
Yeah.
But this is where So let's go like a page over. They're talking about like splitting the atom and how you have the atom in space and stuff like that. And if a scientist could also look inside your mind, what would he find? He would find nothing but space. The same space found inside of the powerful little atom can also be found inside your mind. This should give you an idea of the power your mind possesses. Mind you, we're reading this and she speaks with a little bit of an accent, so there's a lot of like, it is in the nothingness of your mind. That's why Kyle and I are pausing a little bit as we read. It is in the nothingness of your mind that the infinite power resides. So the next time you say that you have nothing to do, you should recognize the potential power in that statement. And it's very interesting because I was thinking when I read that and I heard it and then I read it again, I'm like, that's true. Because you could look at it as I've accomplished everything that I need to accomplish for the day.
Right.
And I have nothing to do. Or, there's just so many different ways you can look at it.
Yep.
Yeah. That I think that was that stood out to me. And then the next page she gets into a bunch of stuff like where is it? She said anything can be found within your mind. Right? That is where all the music lives, in that space. Emptiness is the key. Think of something and then surround it with emptiness, one big zero. Your intention is enough to do the rest. Your mind does the shaping. Yes, but your mind creates nothing, no more than your bass creates music. So no more trying, only space. Trying to make something happen is like trying to walk a straight line when the policeman asks you to. Now, there is something that I noticed, and I don't know if you caught on to this, and I did kind of double underline it to kind of point it out, but it's a little bit further ahead. So I don't know if there's anything that you have that you want to share after
I
this.
honestly don't know where you are, so just keep going and I'll find you.
So I was on page 205.
Okay. I have something on 204 before you go then.
Okay, go ahead.
And it's an interesting thing because it kind of goes back to what we were talking about, the zero being both something and nothing at the same time. Isa says, listen, the same way a luthier, who is someone that makes either a guitar or a violin, looks inside a violin, what does he find? Space. Look inside the bass, and what do you find? More space. But what comes out of this space? Music. So I think she's talking about an acoustic bass at this point, not an electric bass. But
Right.
the interesting thing for me is if you think about like the inside of an acoustic guitar, it's probably something that we're all familiar with. If you look inside, there is space. There's nothing there. But without that space, you don't have sound.
Right.
So at the same time, it's the same thing. It's, we had that 0 before the 1, and if you move it over, it's 10. If you look inside the guitar, it's both something and nothing at the same time. Because the sound can't resonate without that space. You'll just have, if you try to play an electric guitar, there's no resonance behind it because there's no space behind it. I just think it's an interesting thing. It's that yin-yang thing again. It's, it's both one thing and the other.
The negative and positive space that you need in order for something to happen.
Yep.
Yes. That's good. That's true. That's a good point.
Yep.
Okay. More? Do you have more? I don't want to cut you. Okay. So at the bottom of 205, that is a mistake many people make when trying to enter into the world of conscious creating. You are creating everything anyway, so when you try too hard, you push it away. Again, the key to everything can be found in space. Like don't try so hard, as I thought was very interesting. It was a good point.
And that comes back later in the chapter.
Yes. Now this brings me down to the bottom of 206, and this is where I have that double underline under a specific word. So I don't know if you have anything before, anything afterward. Okay. So it starts, listen, my son, what I tell you. You don't understand me, what I tell you, but one day it'll all make sense. Listen to the numbers, my child, all of them, and understand the importance of 0. And now, this is what I thought was interesting. She goes, only Zen will you truly understand the power of space. And I started catching on that she says Zen a lot. Mm-hmm. Even though she's saying then,
right,
he writes it as Zen. Mm-hmm. And I think there's something to that.
I was going to ask you if you thought that too.
I think there's more to it than just writing then, because it goes further. Whatever you hold in your hand, whatever you hold in your mind, don't let disrupting thoughts get in the way. Place your thoughts in the middle of a big fat zero. Like the nucleus of an atom, this is powerful. When you learn to space yourself in the center surrounding yourself with this power, this space, ... Zen, meaning then.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was purposeful. Whatever you choose is certain.
Yep.
I think I think the Zen is an important takeaway
I do too.
when it's being used. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
For sure.
Because this chapter is about that Zen,
Yep.
that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. And it's funny because there's so many play on words here.
Yes.
Victor's trying to figure out whether she's really talking about music and the bass or the bass numbers or
right.
Like there's so much like it goes on that goes back and forth. That's just another one I think, and I honestly didn't catch on to that until this time reading it. Out of all the times I've read this book, I didn't catch on to it until this.
It's
this time.
subtle though. It's subtle.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And whether he wrote this chapter by himself, I mean, I think he wrote the book by himself. He did a very good job of putting those subtleties into the chapter because it makes you question it.
Yep.
And I think that's awesome.
Yep.
And then where is it? The last time she speaks, right? Before he leaves.
Mm-hmm.
This is on page 207. And then before she mutilates Pat wrapping up his book. There's a paragraph and there's no accent. There's no the paragraph is, listen, before you can fully understand the notes, dear boy, you must first understand the space you will place them in. Space can be seen as the birthplace of all things. This is why all things are eventually attracted back to it. This is the principle of zero. Pay attention to what I'm telling you. Your understanding of this will allow you to pack your music with immeasurable amount of power, the power to change the world and the power for the world to change you. But remember, you are responsible. It is now time for you to go. And she winks at him and she raises his arm. But that paragraph does not have any z, zaz, zis,
No,
zen.
it doesn't.
It's all straight written.
Yeah.
Like it really makes a point. So I
And I think
that
the one thing that you skipped out of that, which I thought was interesting, is space can be seen as the birthplace of all things.
I read it.
Oh, did you?
I did, but don't repeat it because I think that's important.
Yeah. I mean, again, it goes back to what we've been talking about. It's both something and nothing at the same time.
Absolutely. So. Yeah. And then they say their goodbye. And he asks if she knows Michael, and she lists a bunch of Michaels that go all the way back centuries to present day.
Yep. But I think one of the things that she says as he's leaving, now again, another play on words.
Right.
You stay wrapped up in the present and leave the wrapping of presents to me.
Yes. Yeah. Yep. It's too funny.
Yep.
It's a good character.
Yeah.
She's a good she's a subtle character in certain ways, but she's also it's a good character.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm glad that she plays a bigger part in the next. Well, all the three of them, Clyde, Michael, Uncle Clyde, Michael, and her play a big part in the next book. Yeah. Then he decides to leave and head home. So I don't know if you have everything you want to say before we get into that.
Nope. Let's get to that part.
All right, go for it.
So they head home, and they start talking about, ISIS and whether Michael actually knows him. And I jumped to 211.
Okay.
So who says this? I don't even know where I am anymore. I don't know where I am. So Michael asks, okay, then what note would the number 0 represent? So he had to think it was, let's go back. There's a little bit more before. So they're talking about the number thing, right? And where did he ask the question? There it is. In music, you do understand how 1 relates to 8, don't you? So For those that don't know, when we're in music, we tend to number things a lot. So if you look at the major scale, there's 7 unique notes. And for the sake of ease, we'll just do the key of A because it's every letter. So it's A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then you go back to A again. So in music, we number those things. So A would be 1, B would be 2, C would be 3. So what they're saying is that, the first note, A, as a singer would call that do, okay? And then, or A, or whatever key you're in, and then it's the same. Number 8 is the same note, just an octave higher. So then later on, Michael asks, what does the number 0 represent? Because we've got 1 through 8, but we talked about the number 0 being somewhere, and Victor finally says, 0 has to represent space. No notes at all. If 0 makes all the other numbers possible, space must make all the other notes possible. And I don't know where it was. I think it's in this book somewhere. But I think it was Michael that said, if space didn't exist, every music that has ever been played would still be playing because there'd be no end to it.
Right. It was in this. Yeah.
I can't remember what chapter it was in, but I know it's somewhere.
I think it's when they start talking about the elements. Like it's fairly at the beginning of the book.
Yeah, I think so too. So the interesting thing, kind of going back to what they were talking about earlier, is everything's kind of based on the number 9, and in music, the way things work is things add up to 9. So like the fourths and the fifths, they're representative of each other, because like from a C to F, that's a fourth, but from an F to a C, that's a fifth. It always adds up to 9. So from C to E is a third, from E to C is a 6. 6 plus 3 is 9. So it's kind of weird that like even like if you go through 9 times tables, like it's the same thing. It works the same way. And there's so many correlations to music relating to math, and that's just one of them. There's so many reciprocals, and again, yin yang. C to F is the opposite of F to C. It flips around.
No, that's the nerdy part of music right there.
Yeah,
that's the theory and stuff.
Yeah.
And then Michael does go on to say on the next page, many people will study hard trying to understand all the information at once, not realizing that it probably wouldn't make them play any better. Knowledge is not meant to be gathered all at once. And he states, allow Isis's information to simmer. All that she told you will not make sense, will make sense in due time. And, and then he asks if she spoke about the birds and the bees. And she does mention something about birds and magic.
Mm-hmm.
And then he goes further on to state that I told you that music is played with the mind, and she gave you everything in simple clues to use it to your full potential. And then they get into, I think this is a very interesting part of the book.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to let you take this one, though.
I don't know where you were going.
I was going to the whole thing about him going outside and the birds.
Okay.
Is that where you going to talk about that at all?
Yeah, I was.
Good. Take it.
So at this point, Michael basically says, go outside, and in 12 seconds, a hawk's going to fly over your head. And sure enough, he goes outside, and the hawk flies over, and he asks Michael how he knew that what was going to happen. And, his answer was, it was the absence of sound, essentially. He heard that as the birds were stopped chirping, he knew something was coming. And then they talked about, how, if the birds are in a tree and something approaches them from the ground, they squawk. But if there's something approaching from above, that, it's usually an animal of prey. So they get quiet because they don't have the ability to hide as easily when there's something above them. And then shortly after that, Michael gets the hawk to land on his arm, and then land on Victor's arm as well.
What is your thought on that? Do you think that that's plausible?
I don't know.
So then the reason why I bring this up is because essentially this is a wild hawk.
Yeah.
This is not their pet.
Mm-hmm.
This is not a pet
Right.
of his. This is a wild, untrained hawk that supposedly lands on his arm.
Right. What's interesting is how the hawk plays a role more so in the next book.
Yes.
You know, and there are people out there who believe that we have spirit animals. That comes from the more Native American stuff. So it's interesting that the hawk is kind of Michael's spirit animal because it comes back so often.
Right.
So, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how plausible it is that a hawk, lands on him, but
I think
I don't. I mean, I've seen hawks do that with people, and there's a lot of protective gear that you need for that to actually happen. So, probably not. But who knows?
I mean, the animals sense you.
Mm-hmm.
They know if you're good or bad or not.
Right.
I mean, I've twice saved birds stuck in a tree.
Mm-hmm.
Like this was when I was younger. I was out, we were horseback riding, and I was walking up the path, and I heard this bird, and it couldn't get out of the bush. So I actually put my hand into the bush. The bird hopped onto my finger, and I pulled the bird out,
Mm-hmm.
and he flew away. And then there was another time where there was, I think it was another bird. It was stuck or something, and I put my hand out, and the bird hopped into my hand, and then I was able to bring it where, like, it's like, that's why I say I think there's something to it.
Mm-hmm.
But I agree with you, because whenever we see anything that has to do with a hawk, if it's a trained hawk, they have all this leather protective gear.
Right.
So it's like, he's going to destroy that arm. It's just, it's like,
and what's weird is I've seen twice in like Instagram posts recently. So one of the podcasts I listen to it's a great podcast if you guys like, people talk about weird stuff, woodworking in particular. But one of the guys was working in someone's home, and they were doing a big like display window, and there was no window in there for a long time. They finally put the window up, and then a bird flew into this window from the inside. It was a hummingbird.
wow.
So he was able to catch the hummingbird in his hand and go outside and release it. And another post I saw was similar, where they're doing work at a house, and they found an American kestrel, and it was stuck in a house. He grabbed it and let it go. So, I mean, yes, it's possible, but I don't know. I don't know how realistic this encounter was.
No, I'm just, no. I mean, we don't know. We'll never know for sure how real it was, but
Right.
I think there's a plausibility to it.
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. And then they go through this, and they talk about, so this is like on page 216, that's what Michael says. Animals respond to your feelings. You need to get your thoughts out of your way to so that your true feelings can speak. And then they lead into
that.
meditation.
I totally agree with.
Yes.
With the amount of dogs that I have fostered over the years, and I've seen people trigger fights in dogs just by their energy, like
Right.
that. I 100% believe. And one of the things that I was known for in the Greyhound group was I was the one that dealt with the aggressive dogs, the fearful dogs, because of the energy that I was able to
Right.
instill in them and produce. And so I don't know, that part I do think is true.
No, it's 100% true. I'm very lucky. Most animals have no problems with me. I have never had an animal really back away from me.
Mm-hmm.
Even ones that you would expect to be vicious towards you, they're fine.
Right.
I tell the story of when I went up to New Hampshire, and I was at my ex-wife's house, and we were hanging out, and they had a dog, a German Shepherd, her father, and the dog was on a chain, and they had him out there as a guide dog. Like, the dog was just, that's how the dog was. I mean, they took the dog in, don't get me wrong, but it was a guard dog, not guide dog, guard dog. And they were inside, and I was like, I'm going to go pet the dog. And they're like, no, the dog's going to like bite you. I'm like, no, the dog's not going to bite me. I'm not really too concerned about that. And I walked up to the dog with about a foot of space between us. I put my hand out, and the dog comes running over, sits down, and licks my hand. And then after he licked my hand, the dog laid down and let me rub its belly. Like, there was no problem. The dog did not try to attack me. The dog didn't try to do anything. It's like, so I totally agree with you. We set off enough energy that animals know the difference.
Yep.
Yeah. But this leads us into the meditation scene in this book.
Yep.
So I want I want you to, because we've talked about meditation before, and you've talked about how you've actually taught it and shared it.
This is one I've never tried before, actually.
You've never focused your energy like this?
Not like this. I mean, in a different way, yes, but not moving energy around the way they do.
Okay. So then I don't know if you have any points highlighted in this that you want to read.
The entire thing.
Okay, so let's just give a background to it. So essentially, Michael teaches Victor how to meditate, and Victor, being excited, feels a tingling in his body, and Michael basically says to him, harness that tingling, right? And gather that tingling and allow yourself to concentrate on it, to bring it up into your system and allow you to build that energy inside of you. All right. And he teaches him how to focus that energy more to the center of his body versus his whole entire body. Right.
Yep.
And Victor learns that the harder he tries to do it, the more that energy goes away, where if he just kind of relaxes and ease into it, it's easier for him to maintain that feeling, that energy the whole entire time. And then Michael says, send me the energy, which is what Michael did to the red-tailed hawk, was send him his energy in order for the hawk to come to him.
Right.
So Victor takes his time and manipulates the energy inside of him, and he takes it, and Michael walks to the other side of the room and he sends the energy over to him, and he makes note to state that the energy looked like a zero, like a circle, as he sent it over to him, and he sent the energy over there. And Michael said he was jealous that he was able to do it on his first try, because when he first tried to do it with the hawk couldn't catch his energy.
Right. He missed. He sent it in the wrong direction.
Yeah. So, and the big thing is he states that your intent must be pure.
Yep.
You know, and that all that stuff. So he talks about harnessing the energy. So you've never meditated to that capacity.
No, not in that capacity. So one of the meditations I do is what I call loving kindness meditation, where instead of moving the energy around, you just envision it around people that you're trying to shower with loving kindness, essentially. But I've never tried manipulating it and moving it around the room like that. So
what is your thought process? What is your thought process on energy?
What do you mean?
So you stated that you have an energy with dogs.
Yes.
And you have the ability to calm them in a sense where they don't feel threatened by you.
Yep.
Which is essentially what you're doing. Do you feel that is an energy you can control?
Yes.
Do you feel that... I'm sorry?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So do you feel that you could send that energy to somebody else, not just
an animal?
I probably
could. Yeah.
Okay. So you believe in this whole idea
of
energy?
Yeah. I've just never tried it.
Okay.
Mostly because I'm afraid that I'd fail at it, which I know is stupid, but...
Well, no, because they say your intent must be pure, and it's not that your intent isn't pure, but you don't want to... If you're questioning it, then it's not 100% pure, and that's not a negative thing. It's just you don't want to do the wrong thing. Right.
What's really interesting is that when you read Awakening Spirits, yes, it's alphabetical order, Awakening Spirits. I always get the two words mixed up, whether it's Spirit Awakenings or Awakening Spirits. When you read the book, they talk about the sacred silence, and it's essentially this meditation that Michael talks you through, which makes you think, like, was that the book that Victor found? Or do these things relate so much? You know, we talk about religions and how they're essentially the same religion with just different takes on them, essentially different names, like
absolutely
all basically the same thing. Like, could this all be part of that? You know, it's the same stuff, just with. You know.
I mean, it's plausible. I mean, it's very plausible.
So,
but it's. I think the big part of this whole meditation is the centering of oneself.
Right.
Is so take the energy out of it. Your thought or your idea of meditation is to center yourself, and it helps you kind of like reorganize in a sense.
Yep.
Which is why I meditate, and I got back to it a few weeks ago. I'm hoping to get back into it do more regularly, but it helps you center yourself and center your thoughts and get yourself into a position where you're like, okay, I can reattack the situation and see things a little bit more clearly now.
Yep. And this past week I was reading, Awakening Spirits, and it was when Tom Brown did this for his second time. It's called a vision quest. So he went out. It was actually a 4 or 5 day thing that he was out in the woods, whatever. And he had such a hard time because he was trying so hard to do it, and he was so worried about failing that it didn't actually happen until he stopped trying, which is exactly what Michael says here. Don't try hard, try easy.
Right. Right. So how does this relate to music? Well,
there's
because
so many ways it relates to music. I think.
No, and that's the thing. I think the big thing is the pure intent.
Yeah.
When you're playing, you're not just playing to play. There's more to it than that.
Yep.
And how you focus your energy into the playing is how people are going to respond to you. Mm-hmm. That's the simplest form of explanation for that, I think.
Yep. I agree.
So, do we go on to the cafe?
Yeah, let's go into the cafe.
I don't really have a lot underlined on this.
Yeah, there isn't a tremendous amount. They go to a cafe and there's a band playing, and in that band is of course Sam playing the bass, and a guy who calls himself the teacher. Wonder who that is. Victor's brother Reggie.
Yeah.
And a guy playing the keyboard who has a tube that goes into his mouth. Wonder who that is? Joseph, his brother.
Yeah.
And the groove regulator, J.D. Blair.
Yeah.
Who we'll hear on Sunday evening, or who we heard on Sunday evening. This is going to come out after we've heard him.
Yes.
So, again, all real people, and then they call up Michael, and Michael does, Michael's thing, and they call up Victor to play because Victor wanted to play with JD, and they actually have gone on tour several times. I've met JD back at the Iridium, actually, which was the show that I photographed and made the book for Victor. I got there early because the Iridium's one of those clubs where you can go and have like dinner before and then just kind of hang out for the show.
Sure.
So while I was eating dinner, JD Blair came out and sat next to me, and we were just talking about music and how I found Victor and that sort of thing. It was very much like the conversation that Victor had, just kind of that matter of fact, just kind of chilling out, chewing gum. Like it was him. Like it was totally him, which is really cool. And JD's just a goofball. He's so funny. And yeah.
So the importance of this is that there's solos that take place, and the drummer takes a solo. Mm-hmm. And in his solo, he does about 8 measures or so of intense grooving, and then he stops, and he's bobbing his head up and down. Michael's bobbing his head up and down. Sam is, the whole group, the whole audience, bobbing their head up and down. And after about 4 measures of that happening, he just hits the splash cymbal one time. Mm-hmm. And to sit there for another 4 measures, everybody bobbing their head. And then as soon as those 4 measures are over, he goes back into the groove. Mm-hmm. And he brings it all together. And that was Victor going, oh my,
yep,
there's a space.
Yep. And he says, even though no one was playing the drums or any instruments for that matter, the groove was still there. The whole room could feel it. It was as solid as it had been all along. The fact that he'd laid down such a strong groove for so long allowed us to all continue feeling it. And I think that goes back to, the chapter about rhythm with Sam. And, Sam talks about music's heartbeat. And I think that's similar, and that's how I was doing that rhythm thing and how Sam does that rhythm thing. It's almost like you can feel like the buildup of the downbeat, and then you can hit it. But you have to know where that peak is. It's hard to find the peak, but there is a buildup of energy there, and that's what you focus on. And you have to feel what that, right before the release, it gets to a spot where it's just so intense, and then it just stops, and then it builds up again. And I think that's part of, that groove is music's heartbeat, and that, just like our heartbeats change, I believe that music's heartbeat changes too.
Oh, of course. And I think part of this is that idea of we focus too much on the 1, 2, 3, 4, and we don't focus on the feel.
Right.
And that's where that comes down to, is that if you just feel it, you'll get that 1, 2, 3, 4. It'll happen.
Yep.
It's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, totally. Let's see. So all that said and done, they stop playing, and then they sit down at the table and they have a conversation with the drummer.
Mm-hmm.
And the drummer says that Michael should be talking instead of him. Victor says, what you did was unbelievable. And then I don't know what you have underlined from the drummer. I'm assuming you may have the same spot, so I'm going to let you.
Yeah, probably. That. So Victor asks him how to understand space better, and he says, start by first understanding rests. Rest is related to space, but not as broad, which I think is a really good way of putting it.
Yep.
Your solo tonight was really good. He talks about solo for a little while, and he says that he rushed a lot of the ends of his solos, of his phrases. He was not in the right space, and he was anxious to play the next set of notes, and that's why he kept rushing. But in simpler terms, you play the notes, but not the rests. If you don't play the rests, give them the same attention that you give the notes, you'll rush. Simple as that. And I remember in high school, one of the things that my choir director would always say, rest is just an inaudible note. That's all it is. But it's important. It's a note still. Like, even though it has no sound, it is a note that you need to play.
Absolutely. And that's what they talk about in a paragraph. They talk about how when we first take lessons and all that stuff. But there's one line in that paragraph. He goes, if we pay attention to the rest and really learn how to use them, we find that they can speak louder and deeper than the notes, which is essentially what you said in your own words. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because he's like, what do you think you should do if the audience is loud? And our response is, you always get louder. Mm-hmm. And it's not true.
No, it's not.
You can't. Like, if you get louder, they're just going to speak louder. But as soon as you quiet down to the quietest you can get, that's when someone starts to listen to you.
Yep.
Because they want to understand what happens to sound. And they use a baby, for example, where, like, if there's sounds going on, the baby's sleeping, but then as soon as the sound stops, the baby wakes up. And it's true. It's kind of like when you take a baby from the city that's used to all the background noise of the city, and you bring them out to where there's no noise, they don't sleep as well.
Yep.
My uncle moved out from Brooklyn. My family moved out from Brooklyn, and they bought a house that was close to the train, just so that train once in a while went by. It was like that like they got used to it now, and they're good. Yep. And if the train wasn't there, to be fine. But like, it was kind of their way of like inching their way out to the island. Is
Yeah, I was gonna say it's not just babies; it's people too. There's some people who can't sleep without a fan or noise going on. Yeah, and I go through those phases too, where I need to have like the TV on or music on. Well, not really music, because music tends to keep me up because I start analyzing it. But I need to have something on sometimes, and like I'm in that phase right now where I need something on to go to sleep to. It's just, I don't know why, and then like a month ago I needed complete silence. I don't know.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting how we go through those phases.
Yep.
And then he talks about getting people to listen, and he says, you can make them listen without their even knowing it. Wait, you can make them listen without their even knowing it. Shouldn't it be? Whatever. The best way to do that is through dynamics, or even better, through space. Create silence and let the next sound that speaks to them be your bass. If done well, they'll listen to you for the rest of the night. That's all I did for my solo, meaning the drummer talking about, well, that's all I did for the solo. Mm-hmm. And then, and that's what they talk about. They just talk about using space to your advantage.
Yep.
I don't know. Do you have any more?
I've got more in the chapter. Yeah.
Go
ahead. Sorry. Smacking them. I don't know where to hold this. I need like a.
I don't know what to do with my hands.
We were talking about. what was the show that it was? Oh, it was I think it was a paranormal show, but it was like before like Ghost Hunters, like before technology got like decent. And they'd walk around with like the giant thing that came over the top of their heads with, like the giant camera, like so
yes,
focus.
yes.
That's what I
Yes.
need. I need like to like sit here so I can like,
You
like,
need
read
something
the
that's you need a helmet on the top of your head that you can mount your Kindle to.
Yep. Because I don't know where to put it. Like I got a microphone here. I'm hitting this microphone. I don't know. I've changed the angle of this microphone and it's better, but it's also worse. I don't know.
That's too funny.
What I was going to say about JD and his solo about trying to make people listen. That's something I did a lot, and that's one of the things as an organist you need to do is part of your job is to control the congregation. Like there are times where either before the service or during like communion or something, part of the job is you need to make sure that the chatter doesn't get so loud that it becomes distractive.
You become the smite of God.
Yeah. Yeah. So, there were times where I would sense it like building. So
Right.
I'd play just loud enough so people could hear me, and then I would drop out. So I'd like duck the conversation down again. So it's something I did all the time. I never
You didn't
really
play louder.
Well, I did at one point. I played louder to get their attention to realize there was something going on, and then I pulled it down.
Oh, okay. So you use both. Okay, you use both.
I use
that
both.
makes sense. That makes sense.
Because
yeah.
because unless they heard it, they wouldn't know that it was missing. So I
Right.
had to, almost. So I've used it a lot. So yeah.
So
I don't know
basically,
where
you
I was.
screamed at them and then you lowered your voice.
Yeah, essentially. But one of the things that I love is that JD says, or the Groove Regular says, start with rest. Learn how to make rest speak louder than a note. Play a musical line, then start leaving notes out, putting the emphasis on the rest. And I think that like Victor does this so well. Like if you ever watch him solo, when he's using his looping pedal, he'll actually just like start playing scales and melodies one note at a time. So he'll play one note and then he'll wait the full thing. Then the note will play itself and he'll play the next note right after it. And he'll actually build a melody and a bass line or a scale one note at a time by waiting for the whole thing to loop. And his time is just so good that he can do that. And it's the way he does it's so good. And it involves space, but also not space at the same time.
Right.
Which I think is brilliant. And then he says, create space in the appropriate way. Then fill the space with solid emotion. You won't have to project it nowhere. The space you created will draw the listener right into it. And then he scooted his chair away and began to stand up. That's the good stuff. Learn how to make that work and you're on your way. Again, Victor does it all the time in his shows.
And then there's one line that's said by Michael.
We have a meeting with
at
the
the end of
frog.
this. I'm sorry?
We have a meeting with the
No.
frog.
Before that, he goes, Victor says that the drummer was incredible. And Michael says he's credible. I think I think he enjoyed playing with my mind as much as you do. And then Michael goes, most people work with their minds when playing with them can be much more effective.
Mm.
And I thought that was kind of like, I know he doesn't mean that as like, let's play with people's minds, but in a sense, that's what he's saying is that let me give you stuff to think about because it's more effective.
Right.
Yeah. And then they have a meeting with a frog.
Yep.
Yeah. The next chapter is very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And the next chapter to me is, I like it because I want to try it.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite chapters, actually.
It is. It's a great chapter. Such a great chapter.
Yep.
But the whole space thing I think is so important.
Mm-hmm.
A space in everything. Like you need space from work. You need space from doing something at home. You need space from being around people. You need like everything. And it's not a negative thing. It's just knowing when it works for you.
Yep.
People don't always know. They don't. So you said you had tangents, but I thought you were going to go off on tangents or whatever.
Yeah, I didn't. I thought I was too.
Is there anything you felt you wanted to add that you didn't go into?
No, I think I'm all right.
No. So do you like Excuse me. Do you like The Awakening Spirit?
I do.
Good.
It's
I'm going to try
it's
to
very
find a
dense.
copy.
Yeah, it's very dense, and it's not an easy read. It's a lot for, at least for me. It's a lot of rereading, and there's a lot of stuff everywhere to pull apart and digest. And
But I'm okay with that. Like, that doesn't bother me. I'm very big. I love Native American stuff, and I love the Vision Quest that they do, and I think that whole thing is amazing. And
yeah,
it's something I'm very interested in.
right. The Saltwater Buddha, I think, was an easy read. I flew through that book. This one, I've read several chapters over already.
Yeah,
just to make sure I got everything.
No, the Saltwater Buddha is, I think, is a great book to read. It is a very easy read. I like how he did it. It's almost as a journal.
Yeah,
and you can, there's very cool elements. It's the author's finding himself, and it kind of just hit home to me because when I was reading it and I was kind of like reading the things that he was talking about, I'm like, that's kind of like my timeline. And I found out that he's like the same age as me, so it was like, oh, that hits harder. But that definitely that's an easy read, right? And that's why I think it's a great thing to hand to somebody and be like, you want to check it out? It's an easy read. Because the music lesson isn't a hard read.
No.
But it's not an easy read.
No.
Because it makes you really think.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why you go back and reread it. Not because you're not getting everything. It's because you're thinking so hard that you may miss something.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's really what it is.
All right. Well, I think we should do our normal closing.
I was giving it a rest, like a little space.
I'm just going to cut it out anyway.
So this is coming. Okay, so after this has come out, we played the second side of Live in America on our live stream. So every Sunday at 7:30, Kyle and I go live on Twitch, and every Friday night, Kyle goes live at 8 o'clock. He's been sharing a lot of new artists, which is very cool. And are you putting that stuff anywhere, the new artists? Do you share it anywhere? We have to figure out a way to share that stuff. I think that'll be fun.
Yeah, because I don't build playlists. I just do it all through the queue in Rune.
Yeah,
and I do most of it on the fly, so there's no
Yeah, we'll figure out something.
Remnants of what I've done.
I mean over the past few weeks, you've shared some good artists.
I've got the videos of the stuff, and I've been thinking about ways to do the full show, but not on YouTube. So I got some ideas in my head to make that happen, but I haven't done it yet. So
we'll figure it out.
Yeah,
we'll figure it out. So every Friday 8 o'clock, check out Kyle.
And honestly, I started at 7:30 this Friday because I had 2.5 hours of music right off the bat. And I went,
oh, nice.
Let's start early. So
nothing wrong with that. Yeah, that's awesome. Every Tuesday, our episodes drop. So this came out on a Tuesday, if you're listening. Every Monday, Kyle drops the visual episode on YouTube, which comes out about 3 or 4 weeks after
I think it
comes out.
I think
about 2 weeks.
8 comes out this week, I think.
Okay, so about 2 weeks after you're able to listen to it in your ears. Every Friday, Kyle's dropping shorts on YouTube. So check those out. Some of them of our horrible segues and other fun things.
Mm-hmm.
We have a
This
Discord.
past week was your first segue.
Yeah, that's true. We have a Discord. We have all that good stuff. So check out our link tree too in our show notes. Discord, Instagram, Twitter. There's an email down there. Everything good is in there. And I think that's all we
Nope, we got our right Google form that we need
to that's talk, right. So. Our Google form. So if you're listening to this, June 11th, our live show is going to be a show about covers. And we have a Google form on our link tree. It's the second link down. That if you click on it, you can fill it out and share the band and the cover song and the original artist of the song. So we could play it on June 11th at 7:30. We want this to be kind of an experience for everybody. And what we mean by this is, for example, one of our favorite covers that we've gone through over the past year was Disturbed's cover of Sound of Silence by Simon & Garfunkel. So that's what we're looking for, that type of stuff. So please take a moment, fill out a form. We one is enough. You can do 2, and then if you have more, put them in the comments in the form, and we'll get that list going for that day. So June 11th, and then come join us.
5 or 6 in there right now, so
okay.
Feel free to do more than one. You don't. You know, you can
fill
submit
it
the
as many
form
times
more
you
than
want.
once if you run out of space. Just keep going. That's fine.
Yeah, awesome. So yeah, and now I think that's it.
I think so too.
Yeah, and then
so we'll see you guys next week. We'll see you on Friday and Sunday. Have a good one, everyone.
Thank you for listening.
See ya.
See ya. Thank you for listening to the Turn on the Music podcast. We hope that you join us next week. Click on the link tree in our show notes to follow us on Twitter and Instagram. You can also subscribe to our Twitch and YouTube channel. If you would like to continue the conversation, join us on our Discord. If you like what you heard, please share it with a friend. And if you really want to help us promote the show, head over to Apple Podcast or the podcast service of your choice and give us a 5-star rating. Remember, always share the music.